My first tune was a female Ixer monk named Mulstermingones. I didn't realize my monk was female until I met a fellow Ixer monk named Pidiet in the Field of Bone. We automatically connected and started to venture into dangerous areas like Kern's Tower. We ventured deep inside the tower and took on more than we could handle. I ended up falling down this huge hole in the tower and died. I was terrified. All my hard-earned gear gone, and no way for me to gather my corpse. All hope was lost, until my friend Pidiet told me to hold tight. A few moments later I get a group invite from this level 53 Halfling druid. It was Pidiet to my rescue. He cast levitate on himself, dropped down to my corpse, and dragged it all the way to the zone. And for me, I've just made my first MMO best friend, and I miss Pidiet to this day. We hung together until our real lives took over, but I wish I remained in contact with him. My MMO BFF forever. Love you, Pidiet. It is impossible to talk about the biggest nerfs in EverQuest history without mentioning pet pulling, a pulling tactic widely used well into the first decade of the millennium. I like to think of it as something easy to learn, but hard to master. Summoning a low-level pet that you could send into a pack of angry red conning mobs and pull one out safely was its main function. It could mean the difference between a group winning or a group losing. It could elevate a lowly insignificant pawn into a superstar. Once the knowledge about it got out and more people started to use it, its days were significantly shortened. One of the best things about playing a pet class during the early years was learning and applying this tactic in the group as well as solo game. It was incredibly simple in concept, but hard to pull off in practice. Summon a low-level pet, send him in and get a single mob in return. Sounds easy enough. The problem was the pet getting destroyed in one hit. If that happened, the mob and his friends would aggro you. It was risky but rewarding. The tactic at the time I learned of it was not considered an exploit. It was surrounded by shades of gray at worst. I thought it was simply part of the necromancer arsenal. Those who look back and just see exploit is not thinking of the time period. It was the early 2000s. Most of us were still completely new to the game and still learning the ropes. I honestly didn't know it approved of tactic from a game-breaking exploit. Only as time went on did it become apparent the magnitude of it all. When guilds started to use it to circumvent raid mechanics, the writing was on the wall. In late 2006 the nerf hammer was brought down. The end of one of the greatest tactics in a pet class's history came to an end. I miss it. I have been back for several years now. I played pretty hard from 99 to 04 until I started college and worked 2 jobs, so EverQuest had to go on the back burner. I actually kept paying my account until I was issued a new bank card, and the numbers did not match for renewal. I returned to EverQuest when I got out of school in 2009, but only very casual as I was working 60 to 80 hours a week to get caught up in RL. I started playing again on a regular basis around 2011. Once RL settled down a bit. So what brought me back to the game when there are so many other options? EverQuest has that feeling unlike any other game I have ever experienced. It reminds me of when I was a child playing Super Mario Bros. On an arcade machine at the corner gas station before NES was released. I would save all my quarters and spend hours playing a game I needed a stool to even reach the controls to play. Once NES was released, there was this amazing game called The Legend of Zelda that was released, and that started my real addiction for video games, especially fantasy-style games. EverQuest took the elements of every game I had ever enjoyed, with added things I had never encountered in a video game, and created something that was not just a game, but an actual experience. You did not just play EverQuest, you lived it. You assumed the identity of your character and escaped from the real world. Having a stressful job in RL, EverQuest has been my escape and mostly a therapeutic experience for me, which has kept me loyal to the game and keeps me coming back day after day. One day back in 2005, while grouping in Muramite Proving Grounds, our group had a zone-wide random drop. Although there are multiple zone-wides that can drop, this one in particular fit my class well. It was the legendary spellshine prism. The hit points and mana were amazing compared to the item I was wearing, and to top it all off, what made this an extraordinary item was the +4 hit point regen. To a necro, the +4 HP regen put it over the top. This is where the story gets weird. Zone-wide randoms happen every day, and although rare, they are fairly, sort of common in EK. The group I was in had one other caster rolling against me, and the scary thing is he expressed excitement at the prospect of looting this gem himself. This filled me with a sense of dread, because even though I was only rolling against one person, I still had a 50% chance of not winning it. So, he rolled first and surprisingly, came out with a low number. I rolled myself and to my satisfaction won the roll. In real life, as all of this was going on, there was a severe thunderstorm happening. As soon as I won the roll, a flash of lightning crashed outside my window and the power as well as my computer went out. I could not believe it. After what seemed like forever, the power finally came back on. My inner feelings of anger were echoed by the loud clashes of thunder outside. My cable internet finally flashed to life, and I was able to go back online. By this time, multiple minutes had passed and I thought for sure the group would have let the other person loot my prism. I reconnected to the game and quickly looked around me. The group had all but disbanded, but thankfully the mob that held my prism was still on the ground. I quickly targeted him and saw that there was 2 to 3 minutes left until rot. The person who I rolled against was standing next to the mob. I quickly looted the item, and he sent me a tell saying that he thought he would be a nice guy and wait for the last possible moment to loot it. He confessed really wanting the item for himself, but holding back. This was the closest I had ever come to both winning and losing an item. Years later, and I'm talking 7 to 8 years later, I'm standing in the guild lobby when out of the blue a stranger sends me a tell. He asked me, "Do you remember me?" I replied, "No, unfortunately I don't." He replies, "I was the one who rolled against you for the prism in MPG 10 years ago." We both had a good laugh, and he said he had never been so tempted to loot an item and log out, but he didn't. An amazing EverQuest experience. I know threads like this have been done before, but I was looking into coming back to EverQuest for the first time in like 13 years due to the NR server, and it got me thinking about old EverQuest memories. Anyone want to share theirs? Here are some of mine. Not having any maps and there weren't any online resources for quite a bit, at least that I was aware of, so it made the world feel absolutely massive and real. I remember finding out about leveling locations and directions on how to get there via word of mouth from other players, rather than being able to just Google everything. I've just never felt such a sense of immersion from a game since then. Sometimes I think it was because I was in my mid-teens when I first started playing, so I was younger. But older players say they experienced the same thing, so EverQuest really must have been that great. Similar to the first one, running all the way from Kanos to Crushbone because I heard it was a great place to level. Again, without maps and at such a low level, it was difficult and dangerous. Once I made it there, I felt like I had accomplished some legendary feat. Guiding on the A-Row server for a while, helping people out, even sometimes when you weren't supposed to. Part of what I loved about EverQuest was just exploring the world, probably why it took me so long to level. So as a guide, whenever the petition queue was slow, I'd just roam all over Norath, just taking in the sheer size and scale of the world, hanging out in the East Common Lands tunnel before Lucklin ruined it, and just talking to people. I could spend hours just sitting in there socializing and not even trying to level, joining a raid against the Freeport guards on my human warrior, because I felt like it was something a follower of Mars should do. As a result, being kill on sight in most of Freeport, and having to have someone show me the secret route through the sewers, felt like I was James Bond sneaking in there, begging for ports and or so, because back in the day it actually took a long time to travel somewhere, even if you didn't die along the way. But it made the journey feel so much more valuable and impressive. How every fight felt critical because if you died you were going to have to go on a naked CR and lose precious exp. And how there was no just running a certain distance until a mob stopped chasing you like there is in modern day MMOs. Back then you better hope you're not far from the zone, or you were screwed. Similarly, train to zone shouts, specters and sand giants being pulled to the docks in Oasis of Mar and everyone scattering, grinding and having fun with groups on the Orc Highway there too, being terrified at lower levels while trying to traverse Kithakar at night, the chessboard in BB where I had a lot of fun times camping out, and just generally all the infuriating things such as kill stealing, camp stealing, training, hell levels and slow grinding of exp, forgetting to bind near your new location, and dying and respawning half a world away. Lol, that all seemed so rage-inducing at the time, but now ironically, just gives me a sense of nostalgia.